Hi, I'm Billy, and this is the Unlock Your Child's Full Potential podcast, where we discuss how to teach our children the lessons we wish we had learned earlier, the skills that will give them a head start in life. No one teaches you how to be a great mother, and unless you had a great mother to emulate, you have no idea what that even looks like. I believe that we all want to be the best moms and create an environment where our children can blossom into the best versions of themselves. And each of us has uncovered some part of that truth. Let's tap into the collective wisdom and inspire each other to become the moms our kids deserve us to be. Hi guys! Today's guest, Christie Darnick, is the mother of two successful, grounded, and balanced young adults who she raised while caring for a disabled husband. Christie has been a school psychologist for 20 plus years and has worked with children and families for more than 30 years. She has been drawn to the topic of resilience since her own challenging childhood and observed that despite chaos and sometimes trauma, many people are resilient despite the circumstances. In this conversation, we talk about how to nurture grit and resilience in our children, how to administer hardship in small doses and teach the kiddos to overcome the challenges that come their way, how to let them be independent and feel supported at the same time. This was one of the best conversations I've had so far. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Hi, Christie. I'm so happy you agreed to be a guest on my podcast. I know building grit and resilience is a favorite topic of yours and one close to heart for many reasons. Would you tell us why?
Yes, there's multiple reasons. I never went to college with the intention of being a psychologist. And now I've been a school psychologist for nearly 25 years, and I've worked with kids and families for like 35 years, most of my adult life. And I had a kind of challenging upbringing with a single mom of 3 kids. I was the oldest. And so I was frequently tasked with taking care of my little brothers, basically, and making sure we all got to where we needed to be, even from a young age. I remember changing diapers when I was 7. So I had a lot of responsibility, which is why I didn't want to go into psychology. I didn't want to go into a helping profession to fix myself, because I've seen that. And that's a fine thing to do, but I didn't want it to say my journey is your journey, because everybody's journey is different. And so I actually ended up in psychology because I was studying architecture. I got married young and then stopped studying architecture and didn't know what I wanted to do. So while we had 2 young children, I realized that all my jobs from childhood, I've probably worked since I was 12, through undergraduate and through early marriage, I was working with kids and families, and I just gravitated to it. And people would come and talk to me, sort of spill on me a little bit. And I just found that I was a good listener and I think approachable. And when I was growing up and moving so much and kind of wondering what was going on, I would have friends go, "Oh my gosh, that's so hard. That's not your responsibility. You shouldn't have to do that. How do you do that?" I even had like high school counselors go, "Wow, you're dealing with what? How are you doing that?" And I was like, "I don't know. I just do." When bad things happen, when we have to move again, when we're struggling with things, or we have to live with the grandparents for a little while or whatever, I was just like, okay, well, here's another thing, and I can learn from it, or what's the best I can make of it. We learned all those cliche things. Home is where the heart is, kind of make the best of your situation. I also grew up with the Serenity Prayer because my parents were in and out of AA. So I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
Right. And so I grew up with those thoughts, and I looked around me as I got older, and I realized not everybody sort of bounced back through those things. I could not have been a good psychologist when I was 20, because I would have been like, "Suck it up, buttercup." It would have been like, of course, life's hard. Just deal with it. Just get over it.
Well, maybe it comes naturally to you, but
that's what I realized. And then also I realized that I probably pushed down a lot of feelings for the sake of moving forward.
Yeah.
And so as I got older, I had to grapple with that, because I always saw a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm going to graduate from high school and I'm going to go do the things I dream of. And I used to visit libraries and sit on the floor and just go through books about art and architecture, and I studied architecture for a while. Learning was sort of my safe space, so I was a really good student. But I was interested in that early on because I saw friends around me that weren't coping so well, or they were going out drinking to cope with a dysfunctional parent, or they would say to me, I would get weird comments from adults about being from a broken home. And I'm like, but we're not broken. We're just different.
Oh, that's an awesome perspective.
Because some of them were like hiding things from their parents and they didn't have good communication. And I was like, well, how are you any better off? I mean, you're sneaking out, you're getting into trouble. Your parents didn't talk to you about the birds and the bees. So I saw a lot of challenging things. We had love in our family, but we also had a lot of mixed messaging and codependency. But I still, for some reason, I felt like I had some resilience because I could still have a sense of gratitude in the midst of whatever. So then as I got married, as soon as my first husband and I got married, he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. It was a very challenging form of multiple sclerosis. So for me, one of my ways of coping was information and learning. So I learned everything they knew at that point. And at that point, they really only knew it as a physical condition, mostly affected women. His situation was rare. But what ended up happening over time is that it affected his memory, it affected his emotional regulation capacity. He was a pastor. We were married as undergraduates because we were college sweethearts. And then he went to seminary. And while he was in seminary, my son was born. And he had a lot of those early neurological issues because he was born early. And in the meantime, my husband lost the use of his right hand, and he's right-handed. And so he had to do everything with his left. And he managed to finish his graduate degree and go into ministry. So we moved to another state, the theme of moving, and renewal all the time.
Life threw you some curveballs.
Yes. And I was always like, well, good thing.
I can
know
learn
how
from
to
that.
bounce back. Yeah. And that bounce back is the resiliency, and as I learned more through life, if you listen to Angela Duckworth, grit is that persistence and that follow through and that passion, and resiliency is the bounce back. And I had done really good with the bounce back. With the grit and the persistence, it was a little more difficult because for me, I was always like, well, if this doesn't work, I can do the next thing. So I had trouble finishing.
Sticking to a thing,
completing, still an issue. I still work on my friendships because I always moved. I was good at starting, but not continuing. I don't know if you've heard of that adverse child experiences study.
I haven't.
That's kind of an interesting one. It's if you're kind of looking at populations and how to help kids be more resilient. So the ACEs study talks about the things that are challenging for kids and then comes up with things that help kids overcome them. Things like having community around you, things like having a sense of gratitude and purpose in spite of whatever's going on around you, having a spiritual practice of some sort, whether it's prayer or meditation or whatever, and then just being sort of in touch with your body. You can put all those things into place and they help you be more resilient. And then I know grit studies have been used to help give people a sense of purpose. And I think Angela Duckworth really wanted to focus on kids.
Yeah, I actually did an episode about that because I have a few episodes like takeaways from books I really like, and grit was one of them. But I wanted to focus on your personal experience, the stories you have seen, that you have just tracked the progress throughout the years and seen how it really looks like building grit in children.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. My own kids had to go through those things, and I learned from experiences with them. And even though the situation isn't exactly the same, I could sometimes use my own experience as a mom in dealing with some special situations in our household and how to pull things back together. I know our family thing was regroup and readjust because we had to deal with my husband's progressing multiple sclerosis. And so, eventually he couldn't write, eventually he couldn't drive, eventually all those things. So we get together with the kids and I say, okay, things have changed. So we need to figure out how this is going to work. And we're a team and let's do this together. And this is where kids' capacity to do things and be involved and have things become a growth experience, it's kind of cultivated through these experiences. So my kids, when little kids draw stick figures of their parents, they would draw their dad with one hand because he couldn't use his other hand. And it was very precious and very innocent. And that's just my dad. And then as we were growing up and he got a limp and he had to kind of lean to one side, he would dress up like Quasimodo, Hunchback of Notre Dame for Halloween, and we had a morbid sense of humor about difficult things that were happening, but we could laugh about it. And my kids always knew they were supported. Mom, you always read those I love you stories. And then as they got older, Mom, you're always talking about gratitude. You gave us that little stone that says gratitude. And they would ask me, like, why do you do that? And I was like, well, things are hard. Life is hard, but we can get through them. And there's always something more for us. And we can make the best of our circumstances, not brushing it under the rug, but meet the challenge. I am just so proud of my kids. We've been through a lot of really hard things. I always talk about them as amazing humans. We all continue to have challenges, and they're so good about getting help when they need it. And then just taking the bull by the horns. Yeah. Yeah. Even my daughter's like, Mom, it's okay to get therapy. We've had my brother and I, we've had lots of therapy. And I'm like, yeah.
Oh, that's decided. Are you having therapy because of me or something I did? That's the way I'm going to take it.
Yeah, no, because you know what? We go into parenting with our best intentions. We do the best we can with the knowledge we have. There are always things that I go, oh man, I should have done that differently. Or I could have been more supportive, or, gee, I hope I didn't screw them up. Many parents don't have the curiosity that you do and the drive to take your responsibility as a parent to do the most for your kids that you can. And we're all gonna screw up because we're human, and we're all gonna do things that we wish we did differently.
Yeah, but at least we tried.
But we try, and I think our kids know those intentions, right? And they know we love them. Even now I go, did I cross the boundary? I'll ask my kids in their 20s, did I screw that up? Or, once in a while I'll go, ooh, I remember this thing that happened. I'm sorry if I did that weird. And so we have a great relationship now with them as young adults because we talk through those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Your adversity taught you how to deal with things. And I'm wondering, for the kids that are somehow enjoying a happy childhood without such traumatic events, how can we consciously administer small doses of hardship? I don't know. I think my kids are being too shielded, not intentionally, but still. Hard times build resiliency. How do I do that on purpose?
Right. So that's a great question. I know my daughter and her fiance talk about this because they both had a lot of struggles to overcome growing up. And my daughter would say things like, it was hard, and I wish Dad didn't have this MS, and I wish things didn't turn out the way they did for him. But it also made me who I am. It made me strong. It made me become my own person. And he feels the same way. So what they've talked about is just that, how to put doses of that in. And I know, so what my kids don't know is, as I sent them to the neighborhood park on their own, because I went to the park on my own, only I'm part of the generation that, had the TV things that came on at 10 o'clock at night. Do you know where your kids are? Because we were pushed out of the house like, well, I don't want to see you till dark. So we had a lot of independence, maybe too much. We got into a lot of mischief. But on the flip side, I wanted to make sure I wasn't overprotective with my kids. So they'd go to the park. But what they didn't know is I'd take the dog for a walk and I'd be close to the park. So I call it like the watch from the bushes type of perspective. Like when my daughter was in gymnastics and she would be doing flips on the beam, 10-year-old doing flips on the beam like you see in the Olympics, and you're going, oh my gosh, she's going to crack her head. She would look to me for encouragement, but when she did that, it broke her focus. So I had to send her a message that you've got this, for this thing, you're more of an expert than I am, and you don't need me. So I would hide behind friends' moms And I would be like, okay, I gotta watch her. Because if she knows I'm watching her, she'll watch me and she'll fall. I think that's a really good analogy. Like, go do the thing, be there, but kind of be in the shadows, like scaffold, like give a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more independence with things. When my son was in kindergarten, he was fiercely independent. We lived in this little town. So I could let him walk to school and he insisted, but I would walk or drive a block or two behind him. Or as he got better at it, I had neighbor friends watch out for him on the way to school. And he did a fine job. And then he found older kids to walk with who I knew. But it was just letting him do it and being there to be supportive. You know, when you first put your kids on a bike, you got to let them take the pedals and the handlebars and let them fall. They need to experience falling. They need to experience that they can get up again. And it's going to hurt sometimes. You're going to get an owie on your elbow. But you are giving them that confidence when you let them do the things.
Yes, that's so
I
true.
would say, yeah.
You know what? My 9-year-old doesn't go out by herself except to the store that's 5 minutes away, and she's 9. We live in the city, though.
Well, that's scary.
I don't know. Am I too scared, or we live in different times? Still not sure what's right.
I think those things, if movie of the week comes up and highlights a story that happened in the 60s or the 70s or the 1800s. Bad things have been happening to people for a long time, unfortunately. We hear about it more. When 9/11 happened here in the States, I was just starting to be a school psychologist, and I had to run around my school and say, turn off your TV monitors. Because if you see the bad things over and over, little kids, even older kids, think that it's happening over and over and over and over and all the time.
Yeah.
When it was a one-time event. So those are the protections you put around your kids. If you see it on the news, clarifying this happened one time, or there are bad things that happen in the world, but it's balanced with goodness, right? So there's...
Yes, you want them prepared so they're not naive, and yet you don't want them scared. That's a fine balance.
It is. And that's kind of with everything in life. The bike riding, the walking to school, the going to the store, letting them fall off things. As my kids were older, I just made sure that they knew, by then we had cell phones. So we had secret codes. If you feel like you're in an unsafe situation and someone's standing over your shoulder, here's your secret code you can send me, and I'll come get you, or I'll call you and say, hey, I need you to come home. And so they always knew they had a way out, but I always let them go do things. I didn't even give my kids a curfew, and my friends' kids had curfews because I knew my kids were out studying for their finals until 1 a.m. at a coffee shop, because communication was important, because we talked about everything. Kids are different. One child shared more with me than the other, and some would share some things I didn't want to know, but not the things I needed to know. And that's just part of parenting. We get through it. I think talking through those hard things is a big part of it.
Yeah, without reacting. That's a tough one too. Keeping your emotions for yourself so they then don't get too scared to share.
It's like when they say something really maybe naughty or inappropriate, and you want to just laugh your head off, and you go, you just like stop yourself and like, ooh, if I laugh, they're going to think it's okay. But also the things, that is how I have kept the channel of communication open with my kids when they tell me things as they're older and get more autonomy, which is their job as they go into their teen years, as they become more autonomous. And they tell me something I don't agree with. I go, And my son was talking about something for quite a while, and he goes, wow, Mom, you're being really cool about this. I said, I'm breathing. I said, there are some things I might not agree with. So as a good listener, I'm hearing you. As a mom, I want to come up through the phone and smack you and say, knock it the heck off. And he goes, oh, really? I said, yes. I said, I'm just measuring my response because I value our relationship and our communication.
So do you give your opinion on another day or at the end of the conversation? How do you do that?
Only when I'm asked, because my daughter taught me when she was 11 and we were in the car and she's a chatter and she said something about a friend and she was bossing her around and this and that. And being a mom, I was like, have you tried this? You know, thinking I'm being helpful. Have you tried that? Have you told her this? She goes, Mom, I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to listen. Okay.
Wow, I do that a lot. I just give examples of what you can do. Yeah,
And
they don't need it.
sometimes what you can do instead that I've learned, because I do this with kids I work with too, is what do you need from me? Do you need me to just listen? Do you need to let it out? Or do you want help with solutions?
Oh,
And I do that now with my kids. And my kids will tell me. And if I start jumping in with advice, they go, Mom, oh, okay, continue.
Wow, I like that.
Yeah, it's really helpful. It's helpful to be present. Everybody needs someone to hold space for them. And that's something we can teach our kids too. And that does, again, foster resiliency because they know someone's got their back, but they also know they have the autonomy to do things and make things happen. So when my kids were in sports or music activities, if they signed up for a season, I said, okay, if you sign up for this, you have to complete it. Like if you're playing soccer, you have to finish the season, even if you're not the best at it. And then if you don't want to ever do it again, you don't ever have to do it again.
Yeah, I read that in the book Grit, exactly about that. That you have to commit to something and then see it done.
Yeah, and even my daughter in gymnastics, that was a huge commitment because eventually she was doing 20 hours a week of gymnastics and school and family life. That's a lot, but she was in competitive gymnastics and, you know, I'm like, you really want to give up piano lessons? I love conditioning. She loved the work of gymnastics and how the body made her body feel. But then she would come across a fear or an obstacle. And she was always a natural student, kind of like I was, and school came easy. So she'd want to quit. And I say, okay, we'll give it a month. If you still feel this way after a month, we'll evaluate whether we cut back or you stop doing this or whatever, but give it a month. Because usually by the end of the month, she'd mastered the trick she's struggling with. You talk about how do you build resiliency. I encouraged her to keep this going. And she's a good example of grit. She's has a pretty natural ability, but she's like me, short and strong and stocky. She's not like a lanky kind of Nastya Lukin kind of gymnast. So there were some things that weren't there naturally. So she worked hard. But this is where she had hard work and obstacles because school wasn't that for her. School came easy. So I knew she needed something to continue to challenge her and give her that drive. And so I would allow her to be in this very expensive, time-consuming sport. I actually had to coach little peewees and help out at the gym to help pay for her gymnastics. And she learned that if she put in the effort and gave it time and persisted, then she would see rewards. So she's an example of a gritty gymnast. And I remember telling the coach, like, any coach can coach a natural gymnast, but good coaches can coach pretty good gymnasts to greatness by fostering their hard work and supporting them and giving them encouragement.
Yeah, great point.
That's the other thing is I noticed in your packet, you know, talking about giving a lot of positive feedback and positive emotions. And in schools, I talk about this with teachers a lot because they're short on time and have a lot of kids, and it's frustrating. And the kid who's persistently in trouble only receives the negative messages, but what they need is more positives. And the research says you need 5 positive statements, whether it's like, good job lining up, good job getting your paper out, good job tying your shoes, you know, and really meaning it. I like the way you greeted your friend today, because a lot of times those kids are hearing, pay attention, stop doing that, da, da, da. So for every correction, even if it's please do it a different way, or, you know, shut up, every correction needs at least 5 positives to balance it because our brain defaults to the negative to keep us safe.
Yeah, it does. It defaults to the negative. I've seen that with my oldest daughter because I praise her, but she focuses on the negative stuff. And in her mind, it's constantly correction. There's no praise. Yes. So maybe that ratio 1-5, it's something to keep in mind.
Yeah. And for some kids who are more sensitive and probably either have perfectionistic tendencies or are kind of hyperactive off the rails, they feel the negatives more. So you might have to provide more positives and then help her recognize, okay, well, this is what you heard. What do you know that's different? Tell me something good about yourself. Get in the car every day with my kids because my son was prone to down moods. And so I would get in the car and say, okay, we're all going to talk about 3 good things about our day today. Tell me 3 good things that happened. And by the time we got around the car on the drive home, I'd go, okay, and what was challenging for you? Instead of the first thing they blurt out, and for them to focus on being the negative or the hard thing that happened, or I didn't get the grade I wanted on my test, or so-and-so said something mean to me. Now they've focused on all these positives and the little things. Through that process, they were able to put a different spin on the negative thing that happened to them. Because like
I love that.
Yeah, that was one of I've heard other parents say they've tried that, and just a little small thing, little small tweak has helped their communication with the kids and helped the kids learn how to like focus on the positive and turn things around, not in a toxic positivity kind of way, because we have to deal with all the emotions, but in a way that's like, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, where is it really? Where is it really? We actually have measurement tools that we can use with certain kids at school that have a 0 to 10 ratio, a 0 being dark, gloomy clouds and a 10 being bright, sunny day, or opposite, I'm not sure. But rating it, like, where is it really? Like if a 10 is a bomb explosion and, a 1 is rocking in my favorite rocking chair and feeling great and giving myself a hug, where is it really on that scale? And that helps give kids perspective, on how big is the problem really. I mean, I grew up kind of a perfectionist, so I get it. Like, okay, no, breathe, step aside. It's really okay. Take the next step. And
I struggle with that too. So,
yeah,
I get it.
And we can pass that on to our kids.
I'm sure I've done it already.
So we like share that with our kids. Like, wow, I'm really struggling with this. I know that I should be okay with things being just okay. But in my mind, I want things to be exactly so. And it can't be, or maybe it just shouldn't be. And modeling that. I mean, even like my son had trouble dealing with frustration when he was small. And someone recommended to me, just build a Lego tower together and then whoopsie, accidentally knock it over and model how to deal with frustration. Oh, darn. I put so much effort into that tower. It took me so long to put it up and I really love it. And now it's not down. I feel disappointed. Saying all the feelings, I feel disappointed, but it's okay. I can make another one. It might take me more time, but I can make another one. Instead of
saying it out loud really helps, because I think I'm modeling the behavior, but I'm just not verbalizing all the things that I go through. So yes. I love that point.
Some kids need that more than others. Some kids intuitively pick it up, and some kids need the explicit direction of, oh yeah, this is disappointing, but you know what? It's not the end of the world. And the other thing it does for you is it buys you time to respond as a parent. Okay, that was frustrating. Oh, I just spilled a whole glass pitcher full of lemonade all over the floor. Our first response is, damn it. And they might see that and you go, oh, okay, wow, I really felt that because glass is dangerous and the lemonade is messy. And okay, whew, I can do this. We can do this. Okay, so-and-so, grab me a towel. So-and-so, grab me a broom, and like, create a lesson out of it.
Yeah, it sounds funny, but yeah, it's so true. We should do that. create a lesson
And
of our everyday experiences.
and modeling self-care. Modeling self-care is the biggest thing. I talk with teachers about, other parents. I've had to do it myself. When the kids are super squirrely, having tantrums, whatever, I've had to go, when they were real little, close the bathroom door. Hey, mommy's having a timeout. Play the music really loud. Mommy's taking a time. Get your hand out from under the door. Mommy's taking a timeout. Mommy needs a break. And they might pound on the door and then just, okay, let's all breathe, because we also have to regroup ourselves and reset. And we are better equipped to do that if we take care of ourselves. And if that's one thing I learned with taking care of a husband with a disability and 2 kids and trying to sort of raise them on my own and deal with all this, is that if I didn't do my self-care, I couldn't be present for them. You know, if I didn't do my self-care, I couldn't self-regulate to help regulate them and help co-regulate with them if they were having a hard time. Even with my husband, who sort of regressed developmentally through his illness, I had to take time away. People would be like, how can you go to the gym? How can you go for hikes? How can you go out for coffee with your friends? Don't you feel guilty? I said, no. I said, because even though when my kids were little, they would cry because they were used to having me around, I knew, and they learned too, that I could be a better mommy if I was taking care of myself. And it got to the point where my husband and kids would say, have you been to the gym? Because I might be getting edgy.
Yay.
Mom, you need your time out with your girlfriends. You need girls' night out, because I know it makes you a better mommy. So I heard back from her what I had been sharing with her.
And now, as a grown-up, is she doing the same? Is she practicing self-care?
Amazing. They, she cooks healthy for herself. My kids thanked me for prioritizing healthy whole foods for them and making sure we all got movement and exercise, and that I modeled taking care of myself for them in the midst of chaos. Often it was chaos, but we can ground ourselves in the midst of that. And they do thank me, because my daughter, through her graduate program, is teaching yoga at Duke. And we got our yoga certifications at the same time. So that was kind of cool, across the country. And
Sweet.
we share like yoga videos or workout videos or recipes. And my son too,
I would love to have a connection like that with them when they grow up, with my kids.
You can keep it. So it's that space and connection at the same time. My 2 kids are so different, but we support each other. We had to come together as a team out of necessity, but then they could have said, oh, thank God I'm done, and took off, and I never heard from him again.
True.
But instead, right, we fostered that connection.
Okay, I'm hopping in for just a minute to tell you about the free resource I recently created. It's called the Connection Blueprint, and it consists of 5 tools that will help you improve the relationship with your child and create an environment where your kid feels seen, heard, and loved. After all the lessons we want to teach our kids require us to first have a trusting relationship with them, so that they're ready to hear our advice and lean on our support. Anytime I feel disconnected and out of sync with my own children, I get back to this blueprint, put the tools to practice, and it works wonders. I'm sure having a loving and trusting relationship with your kids is a top priority for you too. So check the show notes and get your copy of the Connection Blueprint. There's one more question I want to ask you. We give them space. How do we give them responsibilities? This is something I struggle with. I focus on the connection. I focus on trying to make them independent, but they don't want to take some responsibilities in the house. Do you have any advice on that?
Oh, wow. That brings to mind a few things, because I know on the one hand, we have to put our perfectionism aside and not expect that when we give them the responsibility, it's exactly the way we want it. But on the other hand, we want to have expectations of them that they can follow through. So there's always a balance with that. And I know that responsibility is so important. I would have a conversation with my kids and it was like, well, do we get allowance for that? And I said, I take out of the budget so that you guys can participate in activities that enrich you. But we are a family, we're a team, and we all have responsibilities right here. The things that have to happen day to day, they're mundane. Dishes, oh my gosh, you do the dishes and then there's more dishes. Sweep the floor, you sweep the floor, and then, oh my gosh, there's more dirt. So sometimes it can look like, well, why should I do that? It just keeps happening. But just kind of saying, the mundane things in life we need to do. And we're all part of a team. I would sit down every weekend with my kids, and I've offered this to other parents. I would have my little notebook. I just bought a lot of cheap notebooks, and I would sit down and go, okay, what are the things we have to do this weekend? Someone has an appointment, someone has a game, someone has this. What are the things we want to do? And then here are the things that need to get done, because it's part of being part of a family and a household, and we're all on the same team. So I know we need to sweep, we need to do the dishes, we need to mop the floor, we need to vacuum. I would make a list of all the things, and I would say, okay, which two things? So choice. Which two things are you going to do to help out and be a part of the team? And my son never wanted to do it in the morning and set his day up. Different personalities. I had to give him like, okay, you can do it as he got older. You can do it your way, but it needs to be done, by the end of the weekend, whatever. And then with my daughter, she wanted to get it done so she could go on and do her things. But I would have to learn to be flexible, but with expectations. And choice. Choice is huge. Instead of offering choice, like, do you want to sweep? No. Do you want to sweep now, or do you want to sweep after lunch? So sometimes when we're developing a new habit, we need positive reinforcement, right? So that's where the charts came in with my son and helping him get out the door in the morning. I'd have visual charts when he was little. So you do have to have some reinforcement. First these things, then this. You kind of have to hold a little carrot. And as a parent, you have to be willing to follow through. So
I'm willing.
First chores, then the park. They're really excited about the park and like, can't get to the park till the chores are done.
Some days we won't get to the park. Yeah.
And then you have to find something that's motivating too. So that's why sometimes even just having like sticker charts. Okay, this is our weekend chart. Kids get super excited about stickers.
Why they still keep being so excited about it if they get them all the time?
We feel good about accomplishing something, and we feel good about earning something. So like when I have teachers that are like, they just need to do this. They just need to sit. They just need to pay attention. They just need to be present at school. And I go, but they need a reason, and they need to want to. And some days we don't want to come to work. Some days we don't feel like it. Some days we're not in a good mood, but we're rewarded in spite of our hard day. We still get a paycheck. We don't show up and do our thing, we don't get a paycheck.
We got that reward. Yeah.
Right. So like kids at school, they don't get a paycheck. And the paycheck doesn't mean anything because money doesn't mean anything. But it's the idea.
I see your point. Yeah.
We don't always have intrinsic motivation. So we have to do the extrinsic motivators at first and fade them out eventually. This is behavior management. Fade them out eventually. And then it becomes an intrinsic reward because they like feel the sense of completion and reward.
Okay. Because I'm going for the intrinsic motivation. And that's a good point that you have to start with the external and just fade it out. I haven't thought about that. Because I'm like, I don't want to bribe them. But you're right. You have to start.
So you reminded me. That's the big one. I don't want to bribe my kids. And yes, but your employer bribes you with a paycheck so that you show up on bad days. You're not always passionate about showing up and bagging groceries, but you get a paycheck. So just kind of, it's not bribery, it's behavior modification. You're scaffolding and you're helping provide the motivation, because after you give the stickers and they earn it, you can reflect and go, wow, doesn't it feel good to get something done? Look at like your clothes are all over the floor and oh my gosh, what happens? How does it look and feel when they're all put away? What's the difference? And like, be explicit. I think that's the big thing with everything is like, be explicit. What's the difference? And some kids aren't going to care, but at the very least, mom feels better, but I don't have to trip over it, right? And then that's where the non-perfectionism come away. If they're folding is when they put it in, they put it in.
I have a hard time with that.
And then when kids walk into a room and you say, clean your room, what a sense of overwhelm. Because maybe they took out all their dolls and they took out all their bears and they took out all their cars and they took out all their books and their clothes are on the floor. So I would walk in with my kids and like with my son, I go, okay, let's grab all the things with wheels and we'll put them in this bucket. And I would help, because that's another motivator, is let's do it together. And then eventually, okay, now you do it. Tell me when you're done with the things with wheels. High five. Okay, now tell me when you're done with all the socks on the floor. Okay, high five.
That's like for little ones. Mine are 9 and 7, the older. I think that's too childish for
7-year-olds still might need it. 9-year-olds are getting there. 7-year-olds still might need it. At 7, you still don't see the big picture. At 7, you just want to do what feels good, which is, well, what a blessing, right? For us to be back there.
Yeah, we want to go back there.
Yeah. So 7-year-olds still do what feels good and what pops into their brain. 9-year-olds are really starting to think things through.
Wow, Christie, we've got so much to talk about, but we have to wrap it up. Tell us where people can connect with you and what you're currently up to.
Yeah. So in the near future, I hope I will be starting my podcast called Get On With It. Stories about resiliency and grit and how we get through life's challenges. And I'm also coaching with people who are working through transitions in their lives, whether it's change a job, change a place, change a relationship. I'm doing some coaching as well. And people can inquire with me either through my Instagram handle, which is Christie with an IE _Darnick. Still working on my website and my Instagram's kind of new. So I love to be supportive wherever I can.
Oh, you were so supportive today. I learned so much.
Thanks, Billy.
Thank you so much for listening and letting me be a part of your day. If you enjoyed this episode or the show in general, please share it with a friend and help me reach more moms around the world. I would also appreciate it if you consider leaving me a review. Reviews are literally the lifeblood of a podcaster and help me so much. Don't forget to subscribe so you get notified when a new episode drops. See you next week.